Welcome back everyone, it's Mags, and among NIS's extensive experimental dev library are a surprising number of games that border on horror. This trend started all the way back in 2014 with the release of Ataru no Nikki: The Firefly Diary, which continued just 2 years later with the spiritual successor A Rose in the Twilight, both of which I've covered in the past. They're not entirely horror games though, they emphasize the puzzle solving aspect more than anything, just with a spooky atmosphere. I would call them puzzle games before anything else. NIS was really on a kick with the horror theme though around this time, because right smack dab in between those games, in 2015 in Japan, a year later in North America, they released what can definitely be called an actual, straight-up horror game, Yomawari: Night Alone. Created by a different team than the other aforementioned games, this one being led by Yu Mizukami, Yomawari is a lonely and highly unsettling game that has you wandering around town in the dead of night. It follows a young, entirely unnamed child out on a stroll with her adorable dog Poro. Yes, the dog gets a name while the actual human protagonist doesn't. This is a very calculated move on the devs' part, on account of them being absolute sadists. You see, by giving the dog a name, you get more attached to it. "Come on, Poro," the girl says as they walk down the street together. This is also the tutorial where the girl playing with Poro lets you learn the very basic controls. Walk forward. Come across an interactable object. In this case, a stone. Pick up the stone. Throw the stone. Fetch, Poro! Less than 2 minutes into the game, and everything goes wrong. I hope you don't like happiness or comfort, because you will never see any of that again. The girl lives with her older sister, whom she now has to go home to, empty collar in hand, and explain. Just the sheer thought of being put into that situation alone had my heart in pieces. Even worse, she can't even bring herself to tell her sister the truth. She just says that Poro ran away, and I think she genuinely convinced herself of that as a coping mechanism, because the girl talks to herself about it that way a few times throughout the game, and she even lets her sister go off on her own to look for him. The girl waits for an awfully long time for her sister to come home, and eventually decides to go looking for her and Poro. And that is the plot of the game, trying to find the girl's sister, who now seems to have gone missing. The girl is now responsible for both of her precious family members disappearing, after sending her sister on a wild goose chase for a dog you know can never be found. Guilt-ridden and terrified, the girl wanders around the town, lost in the dark. Whoa, wait, we're not on that one yet. In the night alone. Nailed it. You can probably already pick up on, then, the emotional heaviness that permeates throughout this entire game. Story-wise, not too much changes from there until the end. The real focus, the real Yomawari experience, as you can imagine, is in the atmosphere. Progression is simple. The game is broken up into short chapters. At the start of each chapter, the girl will be back home, and you'll be given a new place in the town to search. Once you get to where you need to be, well, shit happens. Knowing where to go is usually pretty intuitive. There were only a couple of times where I truly felt like I was given no direction, but even then, I was never stuck for very long. The map looks big at a glance, but each chapter focuses on completely different areas, and once you're there, it's pretty good at establishing a specific direction to go in for the rest of the chapter, or boxing you into a specific area so you know you haven't missed anything that's too far away. If you're not just straight up told where to go at the beginning of a chapter, something will trigger somewhere in the immediate town where your house is that'll clue you in, so you won't ever be wandering around this whole sprawling map with no idea where to go. Actual gameplay is typical adventure game type stuff. You'll be finding keys to open doors or exploring the area to find something you can trigger, except that this adventure game is filled with abominations beyond human comprehension. See, you're not entirely alone. You have the horrors to keep you company. The town is full of all sorts of spirits that can, and absolutely will, just kill you. I would describe this game, above all else, as lonely and tense. The girl has a flashlight. You can turn it on and off with select on a controller, which I had no idea you could do until after I finished the story, only because there's an achievement related to having your flashlight off. That sure would have helped in chapter 4, and it will be your guiding force throughout the whole game, because only with the flashlight can you see most spirits. They are only visible in the direct beam of light, otherwise you can't see them at all, but you'll know something is close by because of a heartbeat sound that'll play, one that gets more intense the more danger is near, or the closer that danger is. You can both sprint and tiptoe, and you have a stamina bar as well. Sprinting will use it up, it'll restore automatically when you're moving neutrally, and tiptoeing will actually make it restore faster. I think, anyway, it's very hard to tell. Also, the more your heart is pounding, the faster your stamina will be used up, only adding to the urgency. There are sections to the stamina bar too. You'll move faster if you have more stamina left. If the bar gets past the 2 dots in the middle, it'll turn yellow and you'll actually move slower. So it's a precise and frantic game of conserving it while you're also trying to haul ass away from the latest demonic amalgamation you've discovered. This is largely what makes Yomawari so suspenseful. It's that stressful feeling of knowing something is there, but not knowing where or what it is. That tense atmosphere never goes away. You are required to always be on high alert. It hardly ever feels unfair though, despite spirits literally being invisible. The game is very balanced around it. You walk slow enough and the enemies are designed in such a way that you'll rarely just walk into death without knowing. The frantic swinging of your light to cover as much area as possible while walking will just become second nature as a result of being so on edge subconsciously, especially because the streets are absolutely littered with spirits. You'll learn, through some trial and error, how each spirit behaves and how to get around them. And there are a lot of different spirit types. Even late into the game, although it's not a very long game, I was still coming across things, even in areas I'd already been to before, that made me freak the hell out and think, what the fuck is that? Sometimes more aggressive, uncommon spirits will just show up out of nowhere and rock your shit, giving you a heart attack in the process. And you have to remember that, hey, if I walk down this street, this guy, what? Okay, maybe things like that can feel a little unfair, but they're not very common, and the game's save system is forgiving enough to not feel frustrating. If anything, it just serves as a friendly reminder that you can't let your guard down. And when you know they're coming, or if you have a very quick reaction time, even those things are completely avoidable. Mostly. There are even some RNG states, some aspects of the map that change every time you respawn, and switch between a few predetermined things, so some areas might look a little different when you visit them again. For example, this hill with the radio on it. Sometimes nothing will be here. Sometimes some cute kittens will be chillin'. Other times, a terrifying cat monster that fucking kills you. Truly, you will never run out of things that make you jump out of your skin. But over time, you'll get used to the terrifying otherworldly beings and even grow a little comfortable in your discomfort. Yomawari has a way with that. It doesn't change up the rules on you or shake up the formula throughout the game, it simply lets you adapt and become a part of the world. Between each chapter, the girl writes some diary entries you can read, and she starts to think that maybe the spirits aren't so bad. The crazy thing is that I had started to feel similarly about adapting to the hostile environment. The girl is scared out of her mind by everything around her, and she never stops being scared, something she laments in one of her entries, but at the same time, she's been there for so long and has gotten so accustomed that she's getting used to it and starting to see the spirits more as people and actually getting a little bit attached to them. It's a very melancholy kind of sentiment, and that same exact sentiment is brought out in the gameplay itself. You can relate to how she feels through it. Yomawari really shines in that aspect. It also excels at hammering home that overwhelming feeling of loneliness. The town being so full of these spirits almost makes the game feel even more lonely for it. For the entire game, you're running around in the dark just looking for your sister and your dog, the latter of which you know cannot be found. They are the only known semblance of comfort and familiarity the girl has. There's no one to talk to, no one to help. You do not even encounter a single other human being. Well, except maybe this guy. Holy shit, who is this? That in and of itself makes his presence unbearably creepy. He's just doing nothing, and the way his back is turned to give you even more uncertainty, thinking he might not even end up being human at all, this game is a master at making you uneasy. It's things like this that you're going to encounter all of the time. Familiarity doesn't exist. Everything you encounter is either freaky as hell, trying to kill you, or 90% of the time, both. Unfamiliar locations, unfamiliar monsters, all of which you'll be primed to book it from at a microsecond's notice. I don't think I can overstate how emotionally compromising this kind of atmosphere was for me. It was almost too much to handle at times until I got more used to it. That's not a knock on the game, that's actually really cool. It's good at what it does. And that's probably because I don't have a habit of playing many horror games in general, so it definitely took some getting used to. Something I really respect is that the game is so quiet and lonely that jump scares are extremely natural. They don't feel cheap at all. It's really just that the slightest sudden movement or slightly loud noise is startling in contrast with the rest of the game. And it takes absolute full advantage of that. This thing knows what it's doing. There were so many moments that made me jump out of my seat because something just happened. To touch more on gameplay, there are some things you can do that's not just walking around and picking things up. I mean, you can hide. There are lots of bushes and other objects you can use as cover, but I never really found them too useful for normal play, to be honest. Spirits can just be maneuvered around and outran, and how many times are you gonna find yourself in an actual pickle conveniently near a hiding spot? In this game, if you're in a genuine bind, that means you're about to die in approximately half a second. Normally, I wouldn't even be bringing them up in that case, but if anything, I found them to actually be an active hindrance. See, the game has a feature where a little question mark will appear above your head when there's an interactable object nearby, and when you're actually able to interact, an exclamation mark. It's really nice for making sure you don't miss things. Unfortunately, it also applies to objects you can hide in. It still works really well, but noticeably less so when you have to filter half of it out in your head because you know it's just that there's a bush nearby and not a shiny object. In regards to items, there are a few different item categories, and one of these categories is usables. Items you can actually, well, use. One of the most common things are rocks, which you can actually throw to distract enemies. It won't work on every enemy, and it can definitely be pretty finicky, but it's reliable enough. It gives you a little bit more agency in how you can deal with enemies, but you still have to be careful not to run out. You can only hold 15 at a time, and they're not terribly common. The most common thing you'll find are coins. Coins are primarily used to quick save at designated points, these Jizo statues you'll find around town. Yes, it takes consumables to save, so you need to be careful. That might sound really restricting, but honestly, Yomawari is naturally designed around its save system in a very forgiving way. For one, it almost never actually takes very long to get back to where you were. The map is smaller than it looks. You immediately respawn at the last place you saved, or if you haven't saved anywhere, your house. You never lose actual game progress either. Everything you did will still be done, whether that be story progression or even items you picked up. Also, all the usable items you can pick up will reappear every time you respawn, so if you know where they are, it's not too difficult to farm them, especially coins. So what you're really trying to avoid by not running out of coins is the minor inconvenience of farming more, rather than losing a bunch of progress, because that can basically never happen. Well, unless you shut off the game, that is. That is what I would say is the most unforgiving thing about it. Jizo statue saves aren't actually real saves, they're only quick saves. The only way to truly save your game is by using the save point in your house. So if you fully quit out or reload the game, you will lose all the progress since your last house save. But the game allows you to warp back to your house from anywhere at any time. The downside to that, obviously, is then having to walk back to where you were. The whole quick save thing is also probably to make you feel a sense of urgency and like you're never truly safe. Worst case scenario, if you have to turn off the game, you can just warp back and save. That is, if you entirely trust the game to run and not crash on itself. It did crash on me once. To lessen the burden even more, the chapters are short, like roughly around 45 minutes short. And that's on a first run where you don't know where anything is, so a lot of that time is just, looking for stuff. I don't know if there were any that took me over an hour, except maybe chapter 6, only because I spent a solid 30 minutes both looking for a key and struggling to get into the area where the key actually was. I'm so glad it was actually in there because I wasn't actually sure. This thing sucks, by the way, but I digress. And there are only 7 chapters in total, so the game overall is also very short. I'd say that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Despite the naturally slow-paced gameplay, I never felt like the game dragged at all. And as someone who's not used to horror games and the kind of uncomfortableness this game brings you, it's probably for the best not to have to spend too much time in it. But at the same time, I found myself wanting more because it is just that cool. Good thing they ended up making 2 more games then. Besides usable items, there are key items, which are just things that are solely story related, but then there are collectible items. These are for the sole purpose of collecting, and there are a whopping 96 of these optional collectibles hidden all around the map. You'll find quite a lot of them naturally just by going through the main story, especially if you go out of your way to explore. But the sheer number of them means you're still bound to miss a good bit, especially because the game doesn't actually take you to every part of the map naturally. There are still going to be new areas you can explore on your own. Once you finish the main story, all of your progress remains completely intact, and the game enters a sort of post-game state, where you can freely explore the town and do basically whatever you want. Spirits are still around, though there are noticeably less of them, and in fact, many of the collectibles can only be found in post-game. They provide a little flourish of world building and detail to the characters, as most of them relate to either the girl or her sister. Little notes they've scribbled, toys, or other miscellaneous items they've possessed, all with little blurbs about what they mean to them. The hand-drawn aesthetic of the menus, the map, and all the collectibles just makes everything feel so much more personal to the characters, which I really appreciate. As you can probably imagine, getting all the collectibles is an achievement, and is definitely the most demanding one. Not only are there just a lot of them, some really well hidden, but some are just straight up only obtainable under incredibly specific specific circumstances. This includes collectibles that only exist after finding other specific ones, and ones that are tied to RNG states, those random events on the map I mentioned earlier, which means multiple have you needing to just keep reloading and checking a specific area over and over until you get the state you want. That radio on the hill, the giant cat monster is actually guarding a collectible, the Big Bell. If you screw up and get killed, back to the grind before you can try again. There's also this phone that you'll find ringing that has a chance to spawn a ghost if you answer it. Dealing with the ghost will net you a collectible, but if you get killed, back to the grind. Or check this one out. There's a collectible called the One-Eyed Daruma. However, it's only gotten from an event that happens after you pick up the Dull Eyeball. The Dull Eyeball can just be found lying in the park. Except not until after you've found the Doodle Note. So you pick up the Doodle Note, then go to the park and pick up the Dull Eyeball, and then the event triggers for the One-Eyed Daruma. Except even then, you're given a choice in that event, and only picking the right 50-50 choice will get you the item. I'd imagine the event is redoable in some way, I don't know, I was following a guide, but the entire way this game is structured feels very intentional as to make nothing missable, which I very much appreciate. All of this to say, a guide is pretty much required for these collectibles, and even when you are following a guide, they can still be a big pain. There are also separate achievements for some of these collectibles individually, including the radio and the puzzle, which are notable in that a good chunk of collectibles are actually just individual parts to eventually create both of these. I mean, all the puzzle piece collectibles are pretty self-explanatory, but the other group, just called parts, create a radio you can use to listen to some of the game's music in your home. You need to talk to a post-game NPC to actually get it made even after collecting all the parts, and then it'll be there next time you enter your home. Collectibles aren't the only item-related achievements though, as there is ultimately one for collecting every item. This means collectibles, key items, and usable items. Key items are naturally unmissable. In the case of usables, it's just finding one of each type. Other usables besides the rock and coin include cat treats, which you can use to feed cats. That's literally it. Hell yeah. Then there's salt, which won't be available until you automatically acquire some during the story. From then on, you have a chance to get some from trash cans around the map. It can be used to slow down spirits, especially useful for ones like literally just this one. But holy shit, you need it for this one. The last usable you have to go out of your way for, and you can go the whole game without finding it due to its specific location. In Chapter 5, you visit downtown. In the parking lot surrounding the shopping area, you'll find this childlike spirit that's interactable, and will keep turning invisible as it runs away from you. You have to keep chasing it down, and eventually it'll give you a doll. You can only ever carry one doll at a time, but you don't have to worry about losing it because if you do, you can just pick up another one in your bedroom at home. This does the same thing rocks do, but a lot better. It's borderline required for some of the collectibles. As far as other achievements go, it's a lot of do basic thing many times. Hide 50 times. Pick stuff out of trash bags 20 times. Die 30 times. Kick a can 50 times. Feed a cat. Just the fact that you can do that makes this game automatically good. I am taking no criticism. And then, for some bizarre reason, there's an achievement for having 50 in-game hours. This is not a 50-hour game. And it doesn't mean in a menu or something. I don't even think the pause menu counts. It has to be actively playing the game. So, good luck leaving your system on overnight while you chill in the bedroom or something, I guess. As a final note, if you're wondering why the game is called Yomawari, it's not actually related to literally any part of the story. You do encounter a certain monster, and by encounter I mean forcibly kidnapped by, in the main story, but from that point onwards, the only function that monster serves is being able to randomly kidnap you at any point while you're walking around, including in post-game. This monster is the titular Mr. Yomawari, who can and will give you a heart attack by loudly steamrolling you out of nowhere occasionally and sending you to Portugal.
I just sat down.
It's also an achievement to get kidnapped by him. It's literally just RNG, have fun. Yes, full completion of this game is surprisingly detailed, but that is Yomawari. After getting accustomed to the emotional weight, I really loved my time in this game. It's uncomfortable, but that's the point. It does such a good job at setting the tone and atmosphere, really making you feel the pressure and sympathizing with the girl. Again, I'm no horror guru, but this feels like a very well-made horror game. There was clearly a ton of thought put into it and how it makes you feel. It's short, but very sweet, if your definition of sweet is this thing. I can totally see how it became a fan favorite among all of NIS's smaller titles, and I'm very much looking forward to playing the rest of the series because it is a trilogy. So if you'd like to see that, as well as other NIS coverage, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. I've been Mags, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.